Hello and welcome. I am the Restless Kaiser, and once again we are modelling for advantage. This week I'm going to talk to you about RPGs. One of the common comments about RPGs is, unlike miniatures wargaming, you don't need a load of stuff. Quick recap on the additional videos we're doing apart from these updates. Last week's video was our wild and unfounded speculations on what 9th edition 40k might bring to the game, and this week's video is a painting guide for 15mm World War II US paratroopers, which you may have seen in one of our videos recently on our Hit the Beach updates. On the news front, I suppose two things I want to bring to your attention. One, for the historical gamers out there, Battlefront are planning to do an update live stream on Sunday the 7th of June. I think one of the main things that they're going to be announcing is their release schedule. There's lots of things in the pipeline that we were expecting to have been released at or around now. The rebranding and repackaging of the Tanks games, some starter sets for Team Yankee, and the development of the World War II German forces in 15mm. We haven't seen any of this because of the lockdown, but it seems their production's back in, and they've said that quite openly that they're working on their release schedule. So that's my big hope for that. And the other one, of course, is, for anybody that doesn't know, Warhammer's 9th edition is releasing new information every day. We're not going to speculate any further on that at the moment, but as information emerges, we might have more things to talk about. So RPGs, they've got a mixed place in the hearts and minds of many gamers. Some wargamers are avid role players, others don't like to touch it at all. Me, I'm very much a mixed diet sort of guy. I like board games, I like miniatures games, and I like role-playing games. And I like all of them at different amounts at different times and at different stages of my life. But role-playing for me, the big thing about it is that it is a collective storytelling experience between the games master or dungeon master or referee or whatever they're called in a particular system, between that player and the other players, that together they are writing a story. And I think that that often gets lost in some role-playing experiences, and I think that that's really sad. The guys are going to take you through some of their role-playing experiences, and first up is Mr. Johnny B, who's not really a role player but is about to get into something quite similar. Let's hear it, John.
Hey guys, so RPGs this week. It's not something I really partake of properly, but I will show you something anyways. Come have a look at this. Boop. Well, this is the closest I get to an RPG. It's only the greatest game ever made, HeroQuest! And guys, don't forget to bring your broadsword. What a cracking game. Oh, I love me HeroQuest. Don't really get to play that much. Anyway, that's it from me. Back to you, Kaiser.
So for those of you as old as me or more, you might remember this. I did play D&D, but I quickly moved on from it, and this was where my role-playing journey started, for real, as opposed to just kick down doors and kill monsters, which is still a great gaming experience. But I started to play Traveller long time ago. I don't have much of this anymore, unfortunately. It released loads of little books. It's a hideous system because it's 50 years old, and I wouldn't want to go back to playing this system. You'd rolled up a character and discovered that they had no prior experience and got injured, and they're going to start with one skill at level 0 and a blade, and that's your character. You didn't have a lot of control over your character creation in this system, which was a bit grim. Over the years, I'd had problems learning innumerate game systems, and a friend of mine was quite big on GURPS. The idea of GURPS is it's a generic role-playing system and you can use it for any setting you like. And that's true. The real snag with GURPS is it's a terrible system. There's no getting away from it. It is. But GURPS licensed a lot of stuff. It was a system I was familiar with and my friends were familiar with, and they got a license for Traveller. And that was awesome because they did loads and loads of supplements for it. Stuff that just wasn't available in these tiny books anymore. So it's got a real fond place in my heart as Traveller because I remember Traveller, I remember Mega Traveller, I remember many young gaming experiences in science fiction trying to play off the mortgage on the spaceship that someone started with. But it was fun, and I liked it. I've moved on a lot from liking complicated systems like GURPS, but ultimately I think don't let the system get in the way. You can still enjoy the supplements and you can still enjoy the storytelling. Anyway, let's hear from Clueless Mike about some of his role-playing experiences recently.
Hi all, this week's topic is role-playing games, something that's really close to my heart. I love all types of games, but role-playing games is something that I do at least twice a week and have done for, well, since I was about 15, so that's a fair few years now. So I want to talk this week about what we've been doing during lockdown. I'm playing with my group of school friends and we play generally a couple of nights a week and sometimes a longer session on a Saturday. We've done a few little one-shots, but we're running 3 kind of small campaigns during lockdown with games that we've kind of especially chosen to do that with. We play over Microsoft Teams, which is one of the video apps. It works really well for it. So the games we're playing The One Ring. This is a game that's designed to simulate kind of like what it would be like to be adventurers in Tolkien's world. It's not like D&D, it's not like a high fantasy game. You're not throwing out spells, you're not fighting off like a million goblins and doing all kinds of weird stuff. It's far more based in real life, as it were. You're dealing with the struggles of travel. You're dealing with the struggles of a single monster is actually a threat to you. There's the corruption mechanic of kind of like various things you find, sites you find that kind of like corrupt you, and each character has different ways they're being corrupted. It's really interesting, really enjoying it so far.
Thank you, Michael. I think a lot of people have been interested in Lord of the Rings role-playing. I remember playing Merp quite a few years ago, which was also a terrible system. I think just about every role-playing game I've ever played, I've come away from it thinking it was a terrible system. But I'm always driven by the stories, by the world and how immersive it is. Now, often for me, that world can be one that's quite normal, or at least appears to be. Call of Cthulhu. This is quite an old edition. I think this is there you go, it says it on the bottom, 3rd edition. I love Call of Cthulhu. I love the fact that you play characters that can just die. I love that you don't ever really get any more powerful because you're just human beings fighting some great monsters from the Out of Darkness. It is very difficult to pull off horror role-playing, and for me I think that there's 2 elements to get it right. The first one is threat. It's got to be lethal. If you all walk around with double-barreled shotguns in Call of Cthulhu blowing away ghouls, you're not, I don't know what you're doing, but that's not what horror looks like. Horror is the ghoul ripping your face off when you wake up or whatever. So you've got to keep the threat there, the probability that people are going to die if they act poorly or even if they don't. And the other one is to not do too much of it. To try and keep the stories really tight, really nuanced, and keep the players on their toes. So for me, Call of Cthulhu, rather than being a kind of extended campaign type game, it's an ideal system for one-offs that have been quite carefully planned, where people do not mind overly much if their character dies, if it's only for one session. Anyway, let's go on to Mr. James Green, who's been using some software to play D&D during the lockdown, which some of you might be interested in seeing how it works. Mr. James Green.
Hi, James here. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I've been doing with RPGs lately since lockdown started and since before that. So this is Roll20 over on the left hand side and the bottom right hand side. Top right is Discord, which some of you may have used before, where we can chat, and we generally use this for voice communications. Roll20 does have voice communications and video, I believe, but they're not very good. So over here we have a map. This can be controlled by the DM, it can be a dungeon, it can be the overall view of the world, or it can be a town like this. So this is where we are currently. We're taking on the Red Brand gang in the starter adventure for D&D. And down here you can see my character sheet. So I'm Chip Dippington. As you can see, I'm a Lightfoot halfling, I'm a thief rogue, I'm level 3, and all the other things you'd expect to see. What is quite nice about Roll20 is you don't need to know how the game works, you just need to be able to press the button for the thing that you're told to roll. So, acrobatics. I click it, and down here you can see it's rolled it for me. It's added in my proficiency and my dex, which are the two things that matter for this roll, and then it's added a roll of a d20. I was lucky enough to get a crit here, and it's shown that. If I had advantage or disadvantage, you'd be able to see here the higher or lower value. There's many other things that you can do in here, such as rolling generic dice. So if I do /R, 1d6 plus 1d10, 10 plus let's say 20. It will roll all that, show what I've rolled, and then the result. It's quite handy for custom-made things where you don't necessarily want to play D&D, you want to play a homemade game. But yeah, at the moment in quarantine, invaluable this. It's made me reconnect with some friends that I've not chatted with for a long time. It's made it so that people who have never played before can just hop in and play, minimal effort, and the good people at D&D have made this all free. There are a few paid features that you can use if you want to, but we've not, and it's going pretty well so far. Highly recommend it.
Thank you for that, James. Still a bit of an insight for an old fogey like me to see what all the young people are doing today. One system I remember very fondly from looking around a model shop when I was quite young, when all of these things were all sort of mixed together back then, role-playing, wargaming, model making, it was all the same kind of broad hobby to a much greater extent, I think. I came across a system called the Skyrealms of Jorune. Unfortunately, like a lot of things, I no longer have the original box set that I had. I got the new edition, and I think I threw it away. I gave it to somebody, I think. And actually, this newer edition, which I think is the final edition of the game they ever made, it isn't better, and it certainly doesn't look as nice. It doesn't have the lovely little booklets. I think, to show you one, like these, you know, this is how things used to look, as it were. But what was so nice about this particular game was its artwork all over. It really inspired the world, because it's all kind of like charcoal and pencil drawings. That it wasn't just the name of a monster and a stat sheet. It was a world that you felt you could live and breathe in, and it was really different from the one that we had. So this is one of the races that you're up against in there. It's got a Star Wars feel to it, in that there's magic and there's Earth technology. It's like an Earth colony has, well, colonised, I guess. You're on a planet that Earth has colonised, and something like 10,000 years ago or whatever, you've lost contact with Earth. The ancient Earth technology is all hidden or lost or forgotten, except for certain communities which have a lot of power, and they're kind of rivaled with a magic tradition that exists on the planet. Really interesting, but a really immersive world, predominantly because of the quality of the illustrations. I'll show you a few stills. So, next up, let's have a look more from Mr. Clueless Mike.
We're playing a game called 316, which, if you think Starship Troopers, you wouldn't be far off. Your colonial marines going out there and wiping out planets of aliens. It's a really abstract game. You kind of like make a roll each round. You get to kind of like make a roll which is either a fighting roll or a non-fighting roll. They're the two skills in the game. And whether you succeed or fail, you then narrate what happens. So it's very much a collaborative storytelling experience. So that's really good. And then we're also playing a game called Dead Planet, which uses a rule set called Mothership, which is kind of like Aliens. It's a sci-fi horror game. We are travelling through space, and we're sucked out of hyperspace and dumped in this area around this planet where there's hundreds of derelict ships, and none of the hyperdrives work. We can't escape this area of space, so we're investigating what happens. We found various aliens, kind of like depraved colonists, and we're just heading down to the main planet where there's this weird geographical feature that we're going to attempt to figure out what the hell is going on. Okay, let us know in the comments what you're doing.
Last system from me, Ars Magica. Ars Magica is again a system that has been with me for most of my role-playing life. You can tell by the scale of the supplements that I have in front of me for the systems that I played. You know, when a system gets me, or particularly a world gets me, I get quite committed to it. Ars Magica is based upon a fantasy of real-world medieval magical traditions. Just assume that everything that the people in the medieval world believed was true actually is true. So there really is that pig. That isn't just an annoying pig. There is a demon in that pig. That you can invoke the saints to do things if you're particularly inclined in a spiritual way in that respect, and the saint may or may not help you, and you may be able to persuade a saint to help you by throwing its bones out in the street or threatening to do so. That might gain its wrath, or that might gain its favour, depending on whether it's scared of you. You playing this though, this is one of the unique parts of the system. Not only is it deeply medieval, and actually a lot of these supplements, there's a lot of stats and things in, but they mostly tell you how the medieval world perceived these ideas, like the fairies and all that kind of stuff. But it's the storytelling process in Ars Magica which is really interesting. A bit like Pendragon was in its original incarnation. It's much more about a dynasty or a community than it is about individual characters, and it strongly encourages each player to have a pool of characters and to mix round who's delivering the stories. Central to the Covenants is you're playing people from this magical tradition, the Order of Hermes, but really your wizards want to be sat in their laboratories doing magical stuff in the long scale, in the long-term stuff. And the podlings want to be going around and doing the adventuring things and dealing with the problems. So generally what happens is the wizards all sit round a table and agree which one of them is going to have to sort it out. And then they go with the various adventurous types from within the community. It's a really interesting storytelling idea. But it also, you don't go and do adventuring to gain treasure. You go adventuring to solve problems that your community has, and I really like that idea as a storytelling thing. But it's medievalism. A lot of the people who write for this system are medieval historians, and again, really authentic, a really strong flavour to the game. So, speaking of something with a really strong flavour to the game, let's have a look at Mr. James' workshop, and in the words of Monty Python, now for something completely different.
Hello everybody, this week's theme is role-playing games. I've played a variety of different role-playing games over the years. I've played Dungeons & Dragons, obviously, Pathfinder, Scion, 50 Shades of Grey RPG, but what I'd like to speak about today is Worldwide Wrestling, the role-playing game. A game I actually haven't yet played, but would absolutely love to. So let's have a look. Professional wrestling, contrary to public perception, is very much alive and well, with some of the best in the world, Will Ospreay, being from here in Blighty. This kind of wrestling is fun, athletic, emotional, and frankly, I love it. I'll never explain it better than the fantastic video Wrestling Isn't Wrestling, linked in the description below, but when put on the spot, I kind of say it's like EastEnders, but the Mitchells had a 20-minute fight with ladders and backflips and got over it in time for an equally brilliant storyline next episode. On screen you've been seeing some local events that take place all within 30 minutes of my house, and all last year. It's great fun, but why is this in your weekly wargaming video? So this is Worldwide Wrestling, the role-playing game, and its expansion, the International Incident. As you can see from the back cover, it pays homage to classic characters, but plays into the modern athletic style. Gameplay is cut into episodes, where a group of around 4 players each play the part of a wrestler of their own creation. A very simple back and forth system, spending acquired points from imaginative feats of daring do, all controlled by a GM, allow you to control each match in an imaginary episode. This book uses wrestling moves throughout, little pictures to maintain visual interest and to represent moves that can be carried out, sort of as a passive learning system. It also has an excellent set of essays in the back, written by wrestling fans and RPG players to explain both concepts, opening up both role-playing and pro wrestling to those not in the know about one or the other. There's also a reference guide for moves, also available as printouts, so you can Google it and pull off something spectacular regardless of knowledge. Last but not least for this video, there's a list of gimmicks, which is character classes for the game that represent subtypes of televised wrestler. As with a lot of the book, these are low on rules and high on concept, which is very much like professional wrestling itself. The rules are simple, it's all about the reaction of those watching in the crowd, just having fun and not thinking about it too much. So that was a very quick look at Worldwide Wrestling, the role-playing game. Thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to say your prayers, take your vitamins, and everything will be alright, brother. See you next week.
Thank you for that, James. What's so great about contemporary role-playing, I think, is we don't all have to play D&D. There's so many games out there that if there's something that you want to role-play, there's almost certainly a system, including being a professional wrestler. Fantastic stuff. We've reached that point in the show. I'll recommend a YouTuber to you. I'm going to hand over to Big Mek Danskull, who's going to tell you all about himself. Thank you, sir.
How you doing, guys? Big Mek Danskull here with a little channel overview for you. On the channel you'll find plenty of Warhammer content. I keep things as regular as possible, aiming to get 3 videos up a week. At the moment the week starts with an Orc video every Tuesday, This ranges from a hobby update where I discuss the latest project I've been working on, to the occasional skirmish level battle report, and even a sit and talk where I discuss certain aspects of the hobby. The next video normally comes out every Thursday and is Age of Sigmar related. I take a look through the pages of the latest issue of Mortal Realms magazine, learning plenty of snippets of lore as I go. Finally, the weekends for me on a Sunday with a Conquest tutorial mission, where my Imperial Fists regularly take on the Death Guard. These back reps give me a chance to learn the rules of 40k bit by bit and hopefully help some newer hobbyists out there as well. Just before I go, I want to say a massive thank you to the Kaiser and everyone at Modelling for Advantage for featuring my channel this week. I'll see you on the battlefield.
So far, in our final segment, we've been showing you pieces from Clueless Mike about his collection of Chaos Demons. We are reaching the end of Michael's collection of Chaos Demons. Most of them we've seen now. So what we're going to be doing in future is going to kind of rebrand this closing segment a little bit into a Kitbash corner. We've looked at some Kitbashes in the past, and we'd like to do more of it, but they often don't warrant full videos when often they're a couple of head and weapon swaps to just kind of customize the model a little bit. So in future, check out Kitbash Corner, and in the meantime, here's another demon from Clueless Mike.
So this is a Tzitz Prince. So this one was made out of the Ogroid Thaumaturge kit, which is again a fantasy or Age of Sigmar model. That's his base model there with a head. I love the head and the horns on this, so I didn't alter those at all. He usually comes with a staff, so I've cut the end of the staff off and I've put the end of a Demon Prince sword there. It looks a bit like a glaive or a halberd of some sort. I generally use it as a force axe, a force staff, or a force sword, or that kind of Demon Prince weapon. They're not actually force, they're demonic in some way. So that's what I use for there. The wings are from a Great Eagle from the Lord of the Rings range. I managed to find them on eBay for a bargain price. They were about £4, I think. So I was really pleased because I was struggling to find wings that did it justice. I wanted him to kind of like look like a bit of a Lord of Change style wings attached, and it was hard to find any that were the right kind of size. A lot of people use Dark Eldar Scourge wings, but for me they just weren't really big enough. If I just turn him round, so we get behind him, you can see his tail he's got there. That is part of a Screamer tail. Again, I just melted it up a bit and gave it a bit of a bend. You can do that with plastic. You need to be reasonably careful, and you can't bend it a lot because it will break, but you can heat it up. I work in electronics and I have a hot air soldering iron, so I can get stuff quite precisely hot in a very small area if I need to. His arm, I felt he didn't look quite demonic enough, so I ended up chopping his hand off at the end of this arm and stuck a Screamer mouth on the end of his arm there. So I thought that just aided him to look a little more demonic, and then I've given him a book there just to aid in the Tzitz Lawmaster feel of the model. So that's the last of my Demon Princes. The next one I want to work on is a Slaanesh Demon Prince. I've got a couple I can use as Slaanesh, but I really want to make a Counts as of the new special character one, mainly because I'm not a fan of the Demon Prince with a demonette standing on its shoulders model. It just doesn't really do anything for me, so I'm thinking of some kind of homunculus symbiote type of thing going on, but I haven't worked it out as yet. If you've got any ideas for that, please stick them in the comments below. So that is that.
That's quite the collection you've shown us there, Michael. Thank you for that. We've reached the end of the show, I think, folks. So remember to click the like button and subscribe if you've been enjoying what we're doing. Maybe follow the link to our Facebook page, or even share one of our videos with some of your friends if you've enjoyed it. But in the meantime, stay home if you can, stay safe, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye. So here we are, very close to the end of the show now. We normally at this point have one of Clueless Mike's Chaos Demons, and we have in fact got another one of those. Blah, 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 blah. That is a beast, Michael. Thank you for that. Well, folks, that's all we've got. Blah, blah, blah.
Ooh, that's a bit trippy, isn't it? That's the first time I've used this. Whoa! Is that what the warp looks like? Jesus. Yeah, that's what the warp looks like. Look at it. Chaos.